Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to your favorite tele-education program on your number one TV, Joy Learning TV. I know you are always stuck here because there's something good for you. Once again, you are welcome. This is history, your history, my history, this is African history. So it's history, African history time. But before I proceed, let me wish you a hard-working new year, 2023. It should be hard-working. Work hard, study hard, and the sky will be your limit, as we say it. So this is Senior School 1, SHS 1. Our topic for discussion is the civilization and cultures of West African coast. 2022, we discussed civilization and cultures of West Africa, Sudan. Of course, still within the West African sub-region as we have it today. But this one is from the coastal seaboard or the coastal seabed to the middle section, which is the southern part where the West Africa, Sudan ended. West Africa, Sudan is from the tip of the Sahara to the middle belt of the sub-region, which is West Africa. So today we are looking at the West Africa coast, the West Africa coast. All right, so the West African coast in this context of study refers to the territory between the southern end of the Western Sudan and the Atlantic seaboard. I mean, this is exactly what I said. From the southern end of the Western Sudan and the Atlantic seaboard, or yes, the seaboard. But let me chip in this. Now, when we say the seaboard, that is, say, the beaches. But every nation or every country that borders the Atlantic Ocean or that borders the sea, by in this instance, let me use the Atlantic Ocean. You have 12 nautical miles into the sea. So 12 nautical miles into the sea is also considered to be a land of the nations bordering the coast. So, for example, Ghana, 12 nautical miles into the sea is also part of Ghana, as part of our territory. So that's just a quick information for you. So from this area emerged civilizations like the Igbo, Benin, Oyo, Dahomey, which is the Republic of Benin, Asante, Ewe, and the Mende Temini. And this group of people, the Mende Temini, are found mainly in Sierra Leone. But what is the capital city of Sierra Leone? Please, capital city of Sierra Leone? Okay, I know you know. All right, so let's proceed. These civilizations emerged much later than those of the West Africa, Sudan. And the moment you hear of West Africa, Sudan, of which we have studied, then you are looking at Ghana Empire, you are looking at Mali Empire, you are looking at Songhai Empire, and you are looking at the Hausa states and what have you. So I know, so just look at it from that angle. The West Africa, Sudan, and then now we are looking at West African coastal states. So most probably before the 14th century onwards. Let me go back. These civilizations emerged much later than those of the West Africa, Sudan, most probably from the late 14th century onwards. Modern archaeological and linguistic research has pointed to the Savannah country between Lake Chad and the Benue River as the cradle of civilizations and cultures of the West African coastal states. And I know the moment I mentioned the Benue River, something has just clicked your mind, because we know that was where the spread of the Bantus began from. And as we discussed, the Bantus are those who are today found down south of our continent. They migrated all the way from the middle Benue River area in Nigeria, between Nigeria and Cameroon, and now migrated down south to the southern part of the continent. So we are saying that modern archaeological and linguistic research, and again, as students of African history, we know when we are discussing the sources of African history and we are looking at the non-written records, there's no way we'll do away with archaeology and linguistics. Archaeology and linguistics. And I know by now, you've gone back or you are trying to recall what archaeology means, the advantages and disadvantages of archaeology, what linguistic study is, and advantages and disadvantages of linguistics, of which we have studied already. So in short, it's a map depicting the West African coastline. Here, even though you have the West Africa Sudan also merged in, that is on top of the coastline. So you can find Asante, you can find Dahomey, you can find Oyo, Ife, Aro, Inre. These are all West Africa coastal states. These are all West Africa coastal states, of which we are going to study. Obviously, the Mosi kingdoms, the Dendi, the Gao, Timbuktu, belong to the West Africa Sudan, as I explained to you earlier. So here, the emphasis is on Ashanti, it's on Dahomey, it's on Oyo, it's on Ife, it's on Igbo, and the rest. So that is the map for you to guide you in the discussions as I proceed. Here, let me again reiterate, make a point here that it is also very examinable, that you may be required to discuss the West African coastal states, maybe the social organization of the West African coastal states. So this topic is very examinable in West Africa and also in your school exams. So some common characteristics of the West African coastal states. Language is one of the commonest feature or characteristic that one can find in connection with the West African coastal states. So most of their languages evolved from a common parent stock known as the Kwa. Now this is very examinable, my friends. We are saying that, so you may be asked, discuss 3 characteristics of the West African coastal states. And this is what you need to put down to get your A. Language. So most of the languages of the West African coastal states evolved from a common parent stock known as the Kwa. Now, Kwa is a branch of the Niger-Congo family of languages spoken by approximately 20 million people in the southern states of Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and parts of Nigeria. So, first feature or characteristic is language. Secondly, each of the states was built around a core group of people. Example, the Yoruba state of Oyo, the Edo-speaking kingdom of Benin, or Bendel state in Nigeria, the Akan-speaking kingdoms of Asante, and the Aja kingdom of Dahomey. We are saying that the civilizations we are going to discuss, or the states in the West African coast, all developed around some core group of people. And this one takes us back, and that's the beauty of history. We go back into time to help us appreciate today so that we can make informed decisions tomorrow. When we discussed West Africa coastal states, we said Ghana Empire developed around a core group of people. When we looked at Songhai, we again said Songhai also developed around a core group of people known as the Songhai. And so this is not different at all. So you have that in mind. 3 characteristics we are looking at. First is language. The second one is that the states were all built around a core group of people. Take note of that. Now, the third point is that the states and kingdoms of the West African coast began as inland states before gradually expanding southwards towards the coast. All right? We are looking at 3 characteristics. And we are saying the third factor is that the states and kingdoms of West African coast began as inland states before gradually expanding southwards towards the coast. So when a question comes, you are to discuss the characteristics of the West African coastal states. Clearly, you put down these 3 points and you are good to go. So social organization of the West African coastal states. Again, let me point it out. That's because I made a point earlier that this is very examinable. It will come, discuss the social organization of the West African coastal states. It's brief, but when you do it well, you score your mark. All right. System of inheritance. One of the features or one of the characteristics of the social organization of the West African coastal states borders on inheritance. System of inheritance. When we say inheritance, what does that mean? Okay. For most West African coastal states, the system of inheritance was patrilineal. For example, the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Bini, the Aja, the Ga, and the Ewe trace their descent from the male line. So patrilineal inheritance is that inheritance is, carried over from the male line. So you succeed your dad, your dad, your dad. So from the male line. In other words, inheritance is passed from father to brother or son. Inheritance is passed on from father, brother, or son. That is a patrilineal system of inheritance. Unlike the Akan and the Ohafia Igbo, for them, they trace their line of inheritance through the female line. Through the female line. That is, family inheritance among the Akan is passed from brother, or from uncle to nephew in the case of males, and from sister to sister or mother to daughter in the case of females. So this is the matrilineal. It is more from the female line. It is from the female line. While the patrilineal is from father to son or father to brother. But with the matrilineal, it's uncle to nephews. It is important to note that among the Akans, maternal grandfathers, uncles, and brothers exercise greater authority over a woman and her children than her husband. Yes, so that is exactly what it means. With the maternal system of inheritance, fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and brothers of the mother exercise far greater authority over the children of the woman. Of course, maybe it's changing now. But that is the system of inheritance we are talking about. One of the features of the, as part of the characteristics of the social organization of the West African coastal states is system of inheritance. And system of inheritance here is in two folds, patrilineal and matrilineal. Clan system. So we are done with system of inheritance. We are looking at a clan system. Clan is a number of family units coming together. In the West African coastal states, clans and family systems were revered. In fact, to today, families are pretty much important, and so they are respected and revered. The Oweri Igbo, for example, comprise about 100 clans. So the Igbos have about 100 clans. The Akans were grouped into 8 clans. The Yorubas had about 22 clans. 22 clans. Members of the same clan regarded themselves as relatives, since they all claim ancestry to one ancestor. So members of the same clan see themselves as a family, as one, and so there were a lot of things that these people could not do. One of them, obviously, is that when you belonged or when you came from the same clan, you could not marry. Reason being that you were brothers and sisters, or a brother and a sister. All right, so they also had symbols. Now the clans also had symbols that distinct them from other clans. For example, Yorubas had tribal marks and traditional tattoos. It was a number of clans that forms a state. Of course, we are looking at what a clan is, a number of families coming together to form a clan, and also a number of clans come together to form a state. That's so beautiful and simple. But of course, we are saying that the clans had symbols. They had symbols. Either they were tribal marks, traditional tattoos, or they had totems, animals, to represent these clans. Social organization, so far we've raised 2 points. We've raised system of inheritance, and we are now looking at the clan system. So a picture in there is a traditional Yoruba traditional tattoo. So when you found this on a Yoruba lady or on any lady around, and you were that observant, you knew the marks or the clan symbols, one could easily identify that this lady is a Yoruba person. So Yoruba traditional tattoo. We've said all the clans had symbols that represented them. And we've said some were tribal marks, some were traditional tattoos, and some are animals, totems. In Ghana, the Akan clans had symbols like dog, parrot, bat, vulture, crow, leopard, etc., which are known as totems. These animals are sacred. In fact, the symbols of the various clans are sacred. They don't kill them. They are also revered animals. They are their symbols. And so they are totems. So social groups. So far we've done system of inheritance. We've looked at clan system. We are now looking at social groups as part of the social organization of West African coastal states. So the question comes, discuss the 3 or 4 social organization of the West African coastal states. This is exactly what you have to do. And I trust that you'll be able to do this and get your pass mark and go smiling. So social groups. The societies in West African coast were made up of 3 distinct social groups. These were the ruling class, the commoner, or you have and the third one is domestic slaves and pawns. The social groups were 3. You had the ruling class, you had a commoner, and you had domestic slaves and pawns. So what it means is that almost every social setting, there are classes. For example, in Ghana today, we talk about the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. This is a social grouping. But in West African coastal state, this was the grouping, and they had 3 of them: the ruling class, the commoner, and the domestic slaves and pawns. All right, at the top of the social ladder was the ruling class. Obviously, the ruling class would be the rulers, the kings, the chiefs, the elites. So at the top of the social ladder was the ruling class, that is the elites. They consisted of the royalty, councillors, and other political office holders. The next in the line was the commoner, the freeborn class. They usually constituted the working class. So, in terms of Ghana, if you are looking at, today, in today's terms, we say the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. Maybe the commoner would have fit in well with the middle class, a free working class, and there you go. The last group was the domestic slaves and the pawns. They occupied the bottom rank on the social ladder. So social groupings, we had 3: the ruling class, the commoner group, and the domestic slaves and the pawns. The pawn was a person placed in temporary bondage as security for debt or for purposes of obtaining loan. He regained his freedom when a loan or debt was paid. So, how do we put it? So if somebody owns somebody, you could be used as a guarantor. All right. So when the person is able to redeem him or herself by paying, then that person who was used as a collateral, could then be freed. And that was the rule of the pawn. So here it said that it's a person placed in temporary bondage as security for debt or for purposes of obtaining a loan. So you present somebody to secure a loan. When you pay back, then the person is free. Or you owe somebody, you place somebody there. When you pay up your debt, then that person you send there as a collateral could then be freed. So the person regained his freedom when the loan or debt was paid. A slave, on the contrary, was regarded by law as a property of the master. So there's a difference. Who a pawn was and who a slave is. Slave is virtually part and parcel of the owner. By law, is a property of the master. As such, he was subject to his master's whims and caprices, his master's desires. Whatever his master instructed is what the slave did, and could not break his ties with the master. Relatively, slaves in West Africa coastal states were much better treated. Among their clans, for example, domestic slaves became integral parts of their master household or their master's household. What it means is that if slaves in West African coastal states were treated pretty much better, they were members of the master's household. At a point, they could even inherit. So, for example, domestic slaves became integral part of their master's household. Some married their master's daughters and in time could even become eligible to inherit property or office in the master's house. This was very opposite to what was happening in African slaves forcefully taken away against their will in the Americas. Totally different. Totally different. Now, the third social organization of the West African coastal states is marriage. marriage. We've looked at the system of inheritance. We've looked at clan system. We are looking at marriage. We've also looked at social grouping. System of inheritance, the clan system. We've looked at the social groupings where we saw the ruling class, the commoner, and the domestic slave or pawn. Now we are on the fourth one, which is marriage. Marriage. Marriage was an institution that was very much revered by all West African coastal states. And it is so today. This is an institution that is so much respected, and it is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere. It was not simply seen as a union between two individuals, and the individuals here is referring to a man and a woman. A man and a woman. And that's why we said in a clan system, when a male from that same clan, from a different town, finds a woman from the same clan, they could not marry because they saw themselves as a family, as one, because they could trace their ancestry to one ancestor. So the point you are making is that marriage as another social organization of the West African coastal states was pretty much revered. It was revered because it was seen as a union between two individuals, a man and a woman. For example, the Igbo and the Akan people regarded it as a union between two families, of which before marriage could be contracted. The family backgrounds of both the would-be wife and husband will have to be investigated. I think this is so clear, and we can relate to this point that with marriage, which was so much revered, which was between a man and a woman, before it will go on or before it went on, some investigations were conducted. And that is the extent to which the coastal states respected the institution called marriage. However, polygamy was permitted and was widespread. In Benin, Nigeria, the Oba's wives lived in harem, and harem is a household reserved for wives. Harem is a household reserved for wives. And we are saying that with marriage, the coastal states, the West African coastal states, did not look down on polygamy. Polygamy was permitted and it was widespread. There's a situation where you could marry more than one wife, and it was so much respected and observed. Under the supervision of a special official called the Ibiwi, the Alafin of Oyo also had several wives. Polygamy was respected and permitted. Now religion. We've looked at system of inheritance. We've looked at the clan system. We've looked at social groupings. The fourth one we have looked at. We've looked at marriage, and the fifth one is religion. Religion is one of our social organizations. It is one area that organizes us as a group, as a people, and religion cannot be washed off. So religion has been so central in the social organization of West African coastal states. They acknowledge God as the creator of the universe and all that is in it. The Yoruba called him Oloron. The Igbo called him Chuku or Chineke. The Akan Onyankopon, and the Evers call him Mau. In Mole Dagbani, he is called Nawuni. They believed in lesser gods and considered them as a link between God and man. So religion has been one critical area that organizes us as a people within the West African coastal states. And so the point is that before the coming in of even Christianity, the West African coastal states knew of God. They had names for God. They revered God. They worshiped God. And they worshiped God through several means. And so religion was one of the areas, or one of the social groupings, or one of the social organizations around which West African coastal states were organized. They believed that the lesser gods lived in images, rivers, trees, mountains, shrines, and rocks. Apart from the worship of a host of gods, they also worshipped their dead ancestors. These were befitting heroes and elders. So we are looking at religion as one of the social groupings, or one of the social organizations around which the coastal states was organized. And apart from revering and knowing that there's a supreme being called God, of which we've gotten to know the names that these coastal states gave to God. We're also saying that they worship God through other or lesser means. So, for example, they worship God through rivers. So this is what we call the nature worship. Nature worship. They worship the supreme being because those are the works of the supreme being. So it was felt that if you worship the works of the supreme being, then indirectly you are worshiping God. So images, rivers. So the number of rivers. And Africa is also blessed with a number of rivers. So all the rivers that we can find around served as gods or served as means of getting to the supreme being. So they worship trees, they worship mountains, they have shrines, and also worship rocks. So apart from the worship of host of gods, they also worship dead ancestors. Now, an ancestor is somebody who had really lived a life worthy of emulation. If somebody lived a life worthy of emulation, then that person, or for that person, male or female, was worshipped. And that person was seen as a befitting hero. And that person became an elder. A student was asking, so is it the same as you have like this, the saints and what have you? And I said, yes, of course, we could draw some similarity in that. This ancestor worship took the form of veneration of the black stool. They believed that the soul of the ancestors resided in the black stool. A reigning king was regarded as a reincarnation of the dead ancestors and was revered and respected. In some instances, he was considered as divine. And when we say reincarnated, what is the meaning of reincarnated? Quickly check from your dictionaries or ask, but I think you should know. Ask from the one you're watching this program with, what's the meaning of reincarnation? Reincarnate, come back to life. Dead, but you are back to life. I mean, this is something that the West African coastal states believed in, and so it worked. This ancestor worship, of which we say an ancestor is somebody who lived a life worthy of emulation, and so such persons were worshipped and respected as heroes and elders. So the ancestor worship took the form of veneration of the black stool. Veneration of the black stool. They believed that the soul of the ancestors resided in the black stool. The reigning king was regarded as a reincarnation of the dead ancestors. So the king or the chief was seen as the ancestors who have died and have come back to life. And that was how the kings were seen. And so they were very much respected. In some instances, they were considered to be divine. I mean, they were so holy and spiritual that they commanded a lot of respect. Now, festival. These are periods that societies have set aside to celebrate once in a year to mark certain special events in their socio-political history. These occasions, called festivals, come with numerous benefits to the society. One of such social benefits is that normally it was during these festivals that young men found their spouses, and that's great. I know we've done festivals, and so we know the importance of festivals. During festivals, a whole lot of things happen, both positive and negative. But we want to draw attention, we want to focus on the good side of festival. So festival is one of the social organizations around which West African coastal states are organized. And so festivals are very important periods set aside to celebrate once in a year to mark certain special events in their socio-political history. These occasions called festivals come with numerous benefits to the societies. One of such social benefits is that normally it was during these festivals that young men found their spouses. So during this period, men and women from all walks of life who come from those societies go back home to celebrate, and there they could find their life partners. Apart from this, what are some of the other advantages of festivals? I mean, during this time, cities and towns become so clean. And I think this is what we should keep on. Because if our ancestors, our forebears, knew the importance of cleanliness, then my friend, student of African history sitting down, we should at any point in time keep our surroundings clean. We shouldn't be littering around. We shouldn't be throwing things anyhow. We should keep our environments clean. Our cities should be clean. And we should make sure that we don't spit anyhow, anywhere. We don't urinate anywhere, anyhow. These are not good because our ancestors did not do that. And so we should learn from that. A number of festivals were celebrated in the West African coastal states. For example, the annual Anubomi ceremonies of Dahomey were great public occasions. During this festival, they discussed the future of the Dahomey kingdom. And that is one great advantage of festivals. When people come back home, they discuss the future and the greatness of their communities. So if it is Odra, if it is Hobechocho, if it is Homowo, as members come home, they discuss the future of their state. They discuss the development of their state. And that is one thing that Anubome Festival of Dahomey was privileged to have experienced. And that is, anytime there was that festival, there was a discussion of the future of the Dahomey kingdom. The Odra Festival of the Akan, Homowo Festival of the Gan, Hobechocho Festival of the Anglo, Uhum of the Achim, and the Choral Fest of Benin were some important festivals celebrated. During these festivals, the kings made sacrifices to the gods and ancestors and sat in state to receive homage from their subjects. Remember, it is not sacrifices to any other ancestor, but ancestors who lived lives worthy of emulation. That point should be emphasized. So we've looked at this as festival as one of the social organizations of West African coastal states. Okay, so in your short is the Anubome Festival in Dahomey. This is how they dress during the festival. This is how they dress. And it's an African thing, so it's beautiful. Christianity. Remember, before Christianity came, we've said that our people knew God. The religion was one of their social organizations. They knew God, they worshiped God, they had names for God, and they worshiped God through mediums, rivers, trees, lakes, and what have you, and also through ancestors and gods. Now we are on Christianity, which likely to be our last social organization of the West African coastal states. West African coastal. Then after, we'll look at the summary. So early in the 16th century, Christianity was introduced into West Africa coastal states by the Portuguese. And so if it's a Portuguese, if somebody is a Portuguese, where is the person coming from? Yes, I mean, if the person is a Portuguese, where is the person coming from? Okay, the person will be coming from Portugal. Portugal, that's great. As a foreign religion. So Christianity came here as a foreign religion. In August 1516, the Oba of Benin permitted his son and some of his counselors to be baptized. Portuguese most successful missions were established in the kingdom of Wari. However, by the 18th century, little or no trace of Christianity survived on the West African coast until after the beginning of the 19th century. So after the 19th century, then a lot more missions came in. We had a Basel mission, we had the Wesleyan mission, we had the Catholics, of course, we had the Bremen mission. They all came in to spread Christianity. So Christianity became one of the social organizations, one of the features around which West African coastal states were organized. Christianity became pretty much popular after the 19th century, and a lot more people were baptized to become Christians. So in effect, these are the social organizations of the West African coastal states. And I've told you, this is something that is very examinable because it comes, and so you take note of it so well. That West African coastal states was organized around some social groupings, system of inheritance, clan system, social groups. Under the social groups, we had the ruling class, the domestic, and then, the commoners, and you have the domestic slaves and the pawns. Then you have festivals, then you had religion, and then we have about 7 points, which are so good to go if you write these things in your exams. So we'll end here for today because we need to take it slowly, as I told you. So social organization, we'll be looking at the political organization, which is also another area that is very examinable. So now that I know you've understood the social organization, I know that anytime any question comes from these areas or this particular area, it will not be a go away free. I know you do your best in scoring a very great mark in the social, in this side of the topic. So next week we'll look at the political organization of the West African coastal states with their economic and technological development. So go grab a book and read on these topics. In the meantime, I have some exercise for you, as always, as we do always. So there's the home link. This is the exercise I have for you. Discuss the 3 characteristics of the West African coastal states. Please, it has come a lot of times. So don't play with this at all. 3 characteristics of the West African coastal states. Remember, we mentioned language, developed along some core group of people. All right. So please, there were 3. I've given you 2. There were 3. So don't forget. Then 3 social organizations of the West African coastal states. This should be easy. System of inheritance, clan system, religion, marriage, Christianity, festivals. This is what I demand from you. So I wish you all the best. All the best. This is what I want you to do as we prepare for our next meeting. Kindly go over. I think it has been simplified well enough. But the resource material that I used in this discourse is History of Africa for Senior High Schools in Ghana. Beautifully written, language simple. You can find copies at the University of Ghana bookshop. Go grab a copy and read. And read with joy, because there's our history. Nobody can tell our history as we want others to know. So go grab a book, read it with joy, develop the interest in studying history, because there are a lot of things that you could do with history. Don't be downhearted at all. Thank you so much once again. My name is Frank Edu Asare, and I'm your friend in discussing African history. That's our joy. African history, that's our history. It's history time, African history time. So same time next week. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.